I'm a little bit worried about loading any games up on my Amstrad now. For some reason, this built-in tape deck that all of these CPC 464s have, the tape deck started chewing up some of my games, and I started to hear crunch noises, and I'll show you what the tape looks like. Hopefully you can see that clearly, but it started to crease the tape. Hopefully I haven't ruined my copy of Dizzy, because we've had this for a long time. I really don't want to ruin my games. I did plan to do a video. Of course, this is a video of Dizzy, so if I do upload this video in the end, then I did manage to get it to load. But I'm a bit worried now, because any time I try to load a tape game on this machine, it might chew it up. Thankfully the game did load up, so I am able to do this video. It's slowly dribbling out the title screen from the cassette. I've got the project timeline in front of me here, and it only takes 4 minutes for this game to load. I think that's a really nice loading screen. It's a bit of a text-heavy title screen, which is quite common on these home computer games, and they've just reused graphics from the game. Alright, let's start it. At the start here, you do get the choice of going left and right, so it is a very open game. This sort of game genre is something that was quite popular at the time. The Dizzy games are not the only games that are like that, there was quite a lot of them. And I don't really know what they were called at the time. They were not really typical platform games, they were more graphic adventure games. Now you might have noticed that there is only one thing that I can pick up at a time. That does become a bit of a problem because it makes the game a lot longer than it really would be. You end up doing an awful lot of running about. Well, not running about, walking about. If you need to move multiple items quite far, it really does take a long time. That's birdseed. I suppose it does kind of look like birdseed when you know what it is. A little sign stuck in a pile of birdseed. I think that's what the picture's supposed to be. The items in this game have gravity as well. This is definitely not made only for children. I'd say the difficulty is it's quite easy. It's not one of the more difficult games out there. So in that respect, it's a little bit more friendly towards children. Oh yes, I picked up a raincoat which can kill water. I suppose that sort of makes sense in a gamey sort of way. I can use that again elsewhere. And Dizzy is a bit flickery, isn't he? So this game uses an early version of the Dizzy game engine. I think the same game engine was used quite a lot of times after this. And not always just for Dizzy games. But the way it draws its Dizzy character, when he stands in front of stuff, he does kind of blend into it. But because it's a slightly less sophisticated piece of code, overall, the game does speed up and slow down quite a lot. And you'll see that a bit later on. What I do like to do is I like to grab the items that can defeat the enemies and clear the map of all the enemies. Although that really does take a long time. Although it's great, I don't know why people don't like the Dizzy games, because they, unlike a lot of home computer games, they do give you a lot of freedom and they're not stupidly difficult like some games are. I think it was quite common in these games, when you walk into a screen it would spawn 3 or 4 enemies and they would just fly about. It would be extremely difficult to avoid them, or they'd be set up in such a way where you'd require pixel perfect timing to get past them. As I said earlier, the aim of the game is to make a potion, so I've got the actual cauldron set up now. I have to jump there. Unfortunately, this screen is set up in a rather unfortunate way, where if you get too close to the middle, that bridge will just collapse, and there's absolutely no way of progressing in the game after that. A bit of a design flaw. And I think they learned from that, because that sort of thing doesn't appear in any of the other games. Look how much it slows down on this screen. But actually this is an example of how the game is actually quite easy. It's not that tricky to get past that screen. I can think of lots of examples of games where there's platforming that's really, really tricky. Like the first Cauldron game, for example. This game is so nostalgic for me. I've got a lot of memories of playing a version of this game that wasn't actually this full version of the game. I hadn't heard of Dizzy until a magazine cover tape, an Amstrad Action cover tape version of this game. There was a special mini edition of this game released with Amstrad Action magazine, and I played that a lot, and I have a lot of memories of pausing it, typing thanks, and then being able to go to any screen. But a lot of the screens were missing from this version of the game. So at the time I thought that was a demo version, like a work in progress version of the game, and the missing screens had just not been created yet. I was a bit mistaken, it's a special edition that's cut down. We did eventually get this, and a lot of the items were in different places. So it took some getting used to. I didn't mean to come down here, but now I'm down here, I'm sort of stuck down here for now. To the left there's a really big, quite a tricky maze. It's a part of the game that I don't remember ever going into, so I think it's optional but I don't think it was intended to be optional. I think you can sort of, I suppose you could call it a sequence break, but I think you can complete the game without going in there, because I certainly remember beating the game. Yeah, there's all sorts of dangers. I do think this game is a lot more action-packed than the other Dizzy games that were more, I wouldn't say story-based, they were puzzle-based, but there was also a lot more talking to other characters. This game's a little bit more what they would call arcadey. Yeah, there's a sneaky little way to get out of this cave. You can jump up there, even though you're probably not supposed to be able to get up there. Oh, I knew that spider would do that. Alright, let's take the graveyard key. And that's where you use the graveyard key, because the area to the right of this is the graveyard. So I could kill that raindrop if I had the raincoat still, but it's so far away that I just can't be bothered. Those graves all say rip egg yolk. I don't know if that is the bad guy, Zax, trying to intimidate Dizzy, or if this is a graveyard of all Dizzy people. So you can see that Dizzy is actually an egg. Originally he was drawn as a sort of an attempt to make a character that had an actual face. Characters in these home computer games, like that woman there, the faces always end up being a couple of pixels and you can't really do expressions and things. So they decided to make a character with a big face, and that didn't leave much room for a body. This game's definitely trying to be set in a dark and mysterious world. If you ever had a book of fairy tales and you see pictures and it's not particularly Disney, not particularly friendly, and maybe not for young children, I'm sure that's the sort of thing they were going for here. The games that came after this are a little bit softer. I mean, even the places that you go to in this game, you go to dark caves, ice caves, this forest, you go to a castle. The Dizzy games are always set in fantasy, but there was a little bit of humour added in the later games, and this one is just, it was the first one, so they went for something and it just changed over time. Another thing that changed over time is how you can pick up more than one item, because dragging all of these items over to where I want them to be takes ages and ages. Imagine playing this game if you don't know how to solve the puzzles. You would have items just all over the place. What I used to do when playing these Dizzy games is collect a lot of the items and just put them on one screen. If there was a screen that was just a nice safe piece of land, I would drop all of my items on the same screen, like maybe roughly in the middle of the game map. But yeah, with this game, more than anything, you really do have to do a lot of walking. And I've made the bridge collapse. Oh great, now I have to start again. So I'm in the graveyard again, and I've got a can of 3-in-1 oil, which I got from somewhere. And yeah, you can actually get past this screen, which I very rarely have done. This is Zack's castle. The game doesn't tell you that, but this is where Zack's is, so this is the final boss. I've just walked into a trap. This must have been a dungeon where he's just allowed his prisoners to waste away and turn into skeletons. So yeah, it's a bit grim, isn't it, for a game like this? Alright, should we take a look at Zack's quickly? There he is. Don't stay on the screen for too long. You can see there, he just instantly shoots at you, so... There is an item that can kill those fireballs. I have no memory of doing this at all, but there is an area down here. There's a couple of screens down here, so I suppose it's worth taking a look. And that text there says, "The Tomb of Mad Keru." Well, okay. There's nothing over there. Yeah, so there we go. That's Dizzy 1. Otherwise known as Dizzy. I still think that's, to this day, a pretty good game. Somewhat underrated. I don't really understand why, because they're perfectly good games. But anyway, there you go. That's the end of the video.